Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. As Iran and Israel exchange strikes, U.S. President Donald Trump discussed the conflict with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. This comes as world leaders, including the Polish Prime Minister, warn the Middle East crisis could turn global and questions arise over what it means for Ukraine and Europe. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first let's take a look at the latest headlines. Polish officials point to Hungary as the biggest challenge during Warsaw's presidency of the EU Council. As the Globsec forum wraps up, discussions on European defense spending top the agenda. The biggest pride event in Poland, the annual Warsaw Pride March, brightened the city streets on Saturday. Officials warn that the escalation between Iran and Israel could turn into a wider global conflict, while experts say that attention shifting away from Kyiv is a win for Putin. The crisis prompted U.S. President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin to hold a phone conversation on the ongoing developments. What could the escalating tensions in the Middle East mean for Ukraine and Europe? Natalia Komarov has more in this report.
Israel and Iran continue to exchange blows, both in the air and at the UN Security Council.
This is not only a defining moment for Israel, it is a defining moment for the global security order.
Supporting Israel today is supporting war crimes, crimes against humanity, and deliberate undermining of global peace and security.
The situation in the Middle East is being closely monitored around the world. Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk called for diplomatic efforts towards de-escalation.
The confrontation between Israel and Iran is moving towards a regular war in the region that may destabilize the whole world. Since World War II, we haven't been so close to a global conflict. Europe and the US must unite their efforts to stop further escalation. It is still not too late.
The conflict in the Middle East also involves global superpowers. While the US backs Israel, Russia has been allied with Iran. However, after the initial Israeli attack on Thursday night, all the Kremlin did was call for further diplomatic efforts to end the hostilities. On Saturday, US President Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin discussed the most recent military developments in the Middle East.
I think certainly this attack on Iran is demonstrating that Russia is not going to help Iran, that Russia is not a very reliable ally for the Iranian regime.
Iran has been providing Russia with missiles and Shahed drones shot down almost daily by Ukrainian soldiers.
Our adversaries, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, work together. Weakening Iran also weakens Russia in its war against Ukraine.
However, Russia will benefit from the growing prices of crude oil. In the 2 days since Israel first attacked Iran, the price of benchmark Brent crude and WTI have grown by $5 a barrel. And prices may soar even further. Iran is considering closing the Strait of Hormuz, which connects the Persian Gulf with open ocean, disrupting supply chains.
So there's brighten prospects for Russian oil, both in terms of price and in terms of willing of other countries accepting Russian oil, contracting deliveries of Russian oil for the next month, for example, because there is more certainty for Russian oil to arrive to the buyers than for oil from Gulf states.
And although the extra funds may prove important for the Kremlin's economy, crippled by Western sanctions, there is something Putin fears more than low oil prices: democracy.
Directing attention away from Ukraine is an advantage for Putin, yes. But the biggest risk is more in the midterm to long term, and that is regime change in Iran. That's the people rising up.
That's what Israel hopes for, Iranians toppling the Ayatollah regime themselves. The younger generation has been showing dissent since 2022, protesting violations of women's rights. But whether this will happen remains to be seen. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
To see a full interview with Roland Freudenstein, make sure you stay with us until the end of the show. As the Globsec Forum wraps up, discussions on European defense spending and the continent's key security challenge, Russia, are set to continue in a few days during the NATO summit at The Hague. Our defense correspondent Zuzanna Jurek reports on the key takeaways and themes policymakers focused on in Prague.
The last 2 days in Prague at the Globsec Forum were filled with discussions about how European and NATO allies can collectively bolster European defense capabilities. The discussions included technical as well as strategic insights, such as how Europe and NATO can bolster their supply chains, as well as financing and funding, and what regulation or deregulation is needed in order for the capability to be bolstered. However, one thing was clear, and that is that all of these efforts must focus on deterring and preventing Russian aggression against the continent. To that end, the Czech presidential advisor Petr Koller underlined that we must recognize that the threat is already here in order to address it effectively.
He's testing us all time, and we are always trying to somehow, show that we don't want to really fight. And he's laughing. So that just show him that we have capacity and strength to strike.
But the recognition of these challenges will not be sufficient enough in itself to address and bolster the readiness of the European continent. Effective measures are also necessary, some of which will have to come down from Brussels itself. This is the sentiment expressed by Martin Sklenar, the former Defense Secretary of Slovakia, who underlines some of the mechanisms which we can expect to come down from Brussels in the imminent future.
In 2 to 5 years, Russia might be confident and strong enough to test NATO and EU countries and test the unity and cohesion of these organizations. As I say, the urgency and the pressure, that time pressure for Europe is quite big. Commissioner Kubilius come in and discuss what are the next steps. Next week he will be bringing out the defense omnibus legislation piece, which will simplify rules for defense industry. And from what he mentioned, that this would not only entail cutting red tape for creating more factories and facilities for defense production, but also making sure that we can exchange goods, defense articles among countries easier, quicker, and we can unlock some of the financing opportunities that this will require.
And the discussions on bolstering European and NATO capabilities are set to continue over the next couple of weeks, just as the NATO summit in The Hague is underway, with the alliance's members set to agree on a new defense budget spending of 5% of their GDP. For TVP World, from Prague, Zuzanna Jurek.
After 6 months, the time has almost come for Poland to hand over its presidency of the Council of the European Union. According to Poland's Deputy Minister for European Union Affairs, Magdalena Sobkowiak-Czarnecka, the greatest challenge was obtaining progress in the field of EU enlargement, which was blocked by Hungary. Sonia Gatabiszczan reports.
Managing to negotiate further sanctions against Russia with Hungary at the table is an incredible success for the Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union, said Polish Deputy Minister for European Union Affairs Magdalena Sobkowiak-Czarnecka, but suggested that Hungary did halt other developments.
Well, I would say that we had more ambitious plans on the enlargement, but you need to remember that for the enlargement we need to have agreement of all member states. And of course there's still one member state that you mentioned, Hungary, which is not in favor on enlargement, especially in terms of Ukraine.
We don't need a new Eastern Front, therefore we don't need Ukraine's European Union membership either.
Hungary has repeatedly blocked EU initiatives concerning support for Ukraine, be it in the form of military aid, creating an assistance fund, or EU accession talks.
It's simply anti-European when one person blocks decisions that are important for the entire continent or that have already been agreed upon.
Hungary became the Trojan horse of Putin in the EU.
In a Friday interview, Orban said that bringing Ukraine into the EU would mean bringing war to the Union.
Then today we would have a member with a war going on at its eastern borders. It is only a matter of time before all European Union member states would get involved in this war, because then it would be our war. And we do not want the Russian-Ukrainian war to be our war.
Orban further alleged that he thought that the Western view that Ukraine is fighting for European security is a mistake. The Moscow-friendly Hungarian Prime Minister, who favors an isolationist approach to Ukraine, may not have many close EU allies, but has expressed enthusiasm over the victory of the conservative Karol Nawrocki in the recent Polish presidential elections.
From a Hungarian perspective, I think the outcome is fantastically good, as there is a pro-Ukrainian, pro-war, pro-Brussels liberal government operating in Poland. As a result of the latest elections, however, they have now elected a patriotic president. One could also say that the Washington Express has arrived in Warsaw.
While it may be a cause for celebration for Orban, Nawrocki's presidential victory creates uncertainty for the future of Polish domestic politics and external relations alike.
The question is to what extent our president will rather cooperate with the government to defend our European priorities and European initiatives, and to what extent he will rather opt for, let's say, being able to cooperate with the United States rather. So it can be tricky and tough, in particular vis-à-vis Ukraine and the European Union and the United States as well, because this will be the harshest battlefield, I would say, for both the government as well as the president.
The Polish presidency, the motto of which is Security Europe, ends on June 30th. Throughout its term, it brought not only defense capabilities, but also economic, energy and information security high on the EU's agenda. The presidency of the Council of the European Union will next pass on to Denmark. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabiszczan.
From soldier to soldier, a shared experience means a lot. In a gesture of support and appreciation, Dutch Marine veterans have undertaken a major challenge, running 2,600 kilometers from The Hague to Kyiv to raise funds for Ukrainians with post-traumatic stress disorder. In Warsaw, where they stopped for some rest, they were joined by veterans from Ukraine. Natalia Komarov has more on this emotional pursuit in her latest report.
A group of Dutch Marines stopped to rest in Warsaw as they run from The Hague to Kyiv. Their goal is to raise funds to cover providing therapy to Ukrainian veterans suffering from PTSD.
Myself suffered from PTSD, so post-traumatic stress syndrome, and I suffered from it, and I see how the guys are suffering from it there, and the rehabilitation is not much in Ukraine. So we started thinking, right, what can we do to raise money and raise attention and really show solidarity with our brothers in arms.
And how much money did you manage to raise?
Well, yesterday we hit 100,000 euros, so that was a crazy moment.
Every euro counts. Ukrainian soldiers return from the front lines with unimaginable trauma, causing flashbacks, nightmares and panic attacks. In severe cases, PTSD can make it impossible to lead a normal life.
Many soldiers who were on the front lines experience a lot of stress and psychological trauma. It's very difficult, and it's necessary to explain this to people and help the soldiers. They go through all this because they are heroes who defend their homeland, and it is necessary to help them transition away from war to peaceful civilian life.
The main struggle with PTSD, you must understand yourself, that you have a problem, and you must have to try to find some specialists, some brothers and sisters in arms, some other guys who have the same problems, and you must at first speak about this. I have problems.
From The Hague through Berlin, Poznan and Warsaw, all the way to Kyiv, the Dutch Marines will cover 2,600 kilometers on foot.
Raising funds is tough, but running every day, it's like with a backpack of 12 kilograms, we do 120 kilometers a day. So it's really, it's a mental aspect to it, of course, yeah.
But for military men who are used to taking action, all of this is easier to do than sitting on the couch while a friendly nation suffers a brutal invasion. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
Thousands of people flocked to the Polish capital for the annual Pride Parade on Saturday. A spectacle of color and jubilation made its way across the center of Warsaw in a lengthy caravan of dance and music. Our reporter Kazimierz Łysiak went to the Equality Village in the city center and has more.
Today, Warsaw is all about equality, as we are preparing for the annual Equality March or Parade. This is an annual event where the LGBTQ+ community comes out to celebrate, to be together and to wear the rainbow flags with pride.
It's so important for me that so many people always coming every year here and showing their support and showing that we are not some kind of ideology, we're human beings.
I want to support the LGBT community not only in my city, Poznań, because I'm not from Warsaw, but also the community here in Warsaw. And the Pride in Warsaw is the biggest one in Poland, so it's the biggest party. Apart from the fact that we're still demonstrating for our rights, we're also having fun.
It's important just to mobilize ourselves and to bring more awareness and educate people, inform people about the community.
Even though thousands of people are coming to events such as these, the situation of the LGBTQ+ community in Poland is still far from great, especially when it comes to their rights. They are not repressed or anything, but, for example, civil partnerships or gay marriages is something that is still not present in Poland and in the Polish law. Civil partnerships is also something which members of the ruling coalition in Poland have promised to deliver. So far, this is not present here. So it is especially important for the members of the LGBTQ+ community to come out to events such as these to show that they are here and they are here to stay. From Warsaw, Kazimierz Łysiak, TVP World.
June 14th marks the 38th anniversary of the death of movie director Stanisław Bareja, the driving spirit behind movies like Teddy Bear and Men, Woman, Wanted. Bareja is considered the king of Polish comedy. To pay homage to the iconic filmmaker, one of the most famous milk bars in Warsaw underwent an interior redesign to make it reflect the spirit of the Polish People's Republic, emblematic of the director's work. Alex Sumlinski has more.
I am in a milk bar in Warsaw. Now, these types of places were very popular during life under communism in Poland. They were places where you could get something, well, that tasted like home-cooked food and was pretty cheap. Now, it's here in such a place where a tribute to Polish film director Stanisław Bareja took place. He was known for showing the absurdities of life during communism.
During the communist period in Poland from 1944 to 1989, food rationing coupons were used to purchase portions of basic food products as well as other items. On Friday, Polish actors and actresses made the patrons of one of Warsaw's many milk bars feel as if they were back in the days so insightfully captured by Stanisław Bareja.
Those times would grow so absurd that Bareja's ridicule helped people survive through what was ultimately a very hard period. It was really tough. Take food rationing coupons, for example. Can I have one? I remember when I was sent to the store for butter and I lost the coupon. My mom and I spent 3 hours looking for it.
Bareja is known for satirical and absurdist films that dealt with the social and political issues of the Polish People's Republic. Under communist rule, freedom of speech was severely limited and censorship targeted any expression deemed critical of the government or communist ideology. Actor Piotr Pręgowski, who starred in Bareja's 1981 Teddy Bear, says that the use of surreal humor helped get past the censors.
The cutlery on chains, I think that this was a metaphor for slavery and the shackles used to bind people, a reference, so to speak. Maybe the censors really were panicking that if they let this one slide, then everyone will make the symbolic connection.
As for milk bars, they are a staple of Poland's culinary scene. They first grew popular in the interwar period and became go-to eateries in the Polish People's Republic.
The food here is very tasty and we love it here. The dishes taste almost like home-style cooking. In Slovakia we also had a tradition of milk bars, but unfortunately they died out in the late 1990s.
So in order to find out more about what life was like during living under communist rule in Poland, make sure to check out a movie or two by Stanisław Bareja. And in order to find the taste of good Polish food, make sure to visit a milk bar when in Poland. Fun fact, the bowls during those times weren't really screwed to the tables. That was just a way by Bareja to show the absurdities of life during those times. For TVP World from Warsaw, Alex Somlinski.
Just looking at this report made me hungry. And now, as TVP World's team attended the Globsec forum in Prague, I would like to invite you to watch our exclusive interview conducted by Aaron Damon with security expert Roland Freudenstein. From the impact of the Iran-Israel conflict, Iran's growing isolation and concerns ahead of the NATO summit in The Hague, our expert covered it all. Enjoy.
With me now is Roland Freudenstein, co-founder at the Brussels Freedom Hub. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure to be with you, Aaron.
So, Israel, Iran. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk says, quote, "Since World War II, we haven't been so close to a global conflict." Is he right?
That is really too early to say. I understand the exasperation of many Europeans, and including leaders, about this. I think they want to give an expression to the fears that people feel. But one also should not make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, talking about Armageddon, World War III, and so on, I think is not helpful at this time. But yes, the situation is dramatic, and one has to, on the one hand, reflect people's fears, on the other hand, you know, send some messages of confidence to Europeans. And this war can escalate, but it can also remain very limited between two nations.
What is the significance of the timing of this attack in your mind? The US and Iran were set for their, I believe, the 6th round of talks in the coming days. What do you think was behind the timing of the attack?
Obviously, Israel and the US got wind of Iranian massive cheating here. Iran was going far beyond the obligations that it had committed to in speeding up the development of nuclear weapons. So that was one factor, which let's say put time pressure on any kind of action to disable the Iranian nuclear program. Second, Iran is at its weakest point militarily now in the Middle Eastern context, at least since the revolutionary regime came into being in the late 1970s. So, you know, Iran has lost allies like Hezbollah. That was a major deterrent for any Israeli action against the nuclear program. There are no other countries in the region that are now helping Iran in any way. The Houthi militias in Yemen, nothing else. So, and at the same time, there is a US administration in office that, according to all we know, was somehow informed, certainly didn't try to, or couldn't actually keep the Israelis from doing this. And as we see that President Trump is selling this whole thing as some kind of victory.
If we move to Central Eastern Europe, how will Russia be watching this play out? What will Vladimir Putin be looking for, and the Kremlin in the Middle East?
For Vladimir Putin, this is a mixed bag. In the short run, the oil price is going up, which is great for his finances. The drone supply from Iran will not be the same, although it has to be said that many drones were already produced in license in Russia itself. So the Shahid drone, for example, which is extremely cheap, can be mass produced. This was largely done in Russia. Ballistic missiles was, I think, still a different story. They were shipped. These shipments are not going to come now. The attention of the world will simply be directed away from Russia's war against Ukraine.
Is there an advantage for Mr. Putin?
That is, the directing attention away from Ukraine is an advantage for Putin, yes. But the biggest risk is more in the midterm to long term, and that is regime change in Iran. That's the people rising up. I mean, the whole operation has been named the rising lion, and it's a Bible quote: "The people rose like a lion," and the people that is rising here, or should be rising, is obviously not the Jewish people, it's the Iranian people. And Netanyahu made that clear yesterday. So regime change in Iran, the toppling of a central piece in this autocrat international, would be a terrifying blow to not just Russia but also China. And it would be a signal to other nations that you can defy a totalitarian regime if everybody rises up at the same time, or a sufficient number of people rise up at the same time. That is the biggest minus for Vladimir Putin.
As we talk about Russia and indeed its invasion of Ukraine, NATO summit at the end of the month, is this somewhat of a moment of truth for this alliance and for Ukraine?
Well, NATO is not directly busy with the Middle East. So, and the fact that we live in an extremely volatile world full of risks and actual conflicts and potential conflicts in the future, that's nothing new. So, yeah, I think it makes international security even more of a topic. But I think the NATO summit in The Hague is going to go well if it doesn't produce anything dramatic, except for, of course, the famous 5% of GDP commitment of all member states for military spending in the future. And that will be probably the best result if that is adopted, and if there is a concrete timeline agreed by everyone, if there is a concrete distribution between strictly military expenditure and civilian infrastructure expenditure, and that will be it. The fears are, of course, that there will be some kind of blow-up in The Hague. So that's why the summit was actually shortened in time, in order to make it as improbable as possible.
So you don't expect the summit end of the month to be a turning point for Ukraine? Obviously there is the broader No.
Ukraine there will be no mentioning of Ukraine in the final document. That has already transpired. There might not even be a mentioning of Russia, which would be a defeat for the eastern flank countries and those that want to help Ukraine in Europe. But so be it. I mean, I think a fairly consensual summit is all that we can achieve at the moment.
But what does that mean for the power of particularly NATO's deterrence? The eastern flank, Poland, the Baltics, the Nordics. What does that mean when we talk about, will America indeed come to the table should Russia attack one of these NATO countries on the eastern flank? And can that eastern flank trust that the US would come to their aid?
And will Vladimir Putin believe that the US will come to the rescue?
Exactly.
That's the famous Article 5 question, and that's the billion-dollar question, or euro question if you want. We don't know to what extent President Trump has already managed to undermine Article 5, the credibility of this alliance character of NATO.
And that was going to be my next question. Do you feel like that NATO Article 5, this idea that an attack on one is an attack on all, and that America would come to the aid of, let's say, Poland or the Nordics or the Baltics, or any NATO country, has that guarantee, that NATO deterrence guarantee, become weaker under Donald Trump?
Yes, absolutely. But still, there's no doubt that a world with NATO, even a weakened NATO, is better than a world without NATO. So, I mean, the Europeans take what they can get at the moment, I would say. The same refers to the American nuclear guarantee. What we hear from Washington is that the nuclear guarantee will last. Whereas conventional presence, conventional troops, US troops in Europe, may indeed be withdrawn over the next couple of years, maybe even months.
So does Europe have real reason to be worried?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Europe had reasons to be worried for a long time. And, you know, I mean, we heard the alarm, but we pushed the snooze button. And, you know, famous dictum about Russia's actions in Eastern Europe already in 2008 and following. So we have now finally woken up, seriously, but it will take time. And the risk is, of course, that the US troop presence and the US commitment, security commitment to Europe, dwindles faster than Europe can build up its capacities to take care of its own security and defend itself. And this is a period of extreme insecurity and instability. That's the next couple of years. And this will be an extremely volatile period. And plus, we have problems like wars in the Middle East now.
Roland Freudenstein, co-founder at the Brussels Freedom Hub, thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
And that's all for this exclusive interview here from the Globsec Forum in Prague. Stay with us on TVP World. I'm Aaron Darman. Goodbye for now.